love the bear.
Bear always makes me smile.
I just love it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't want to take away any of Ross and Shannon's time, so I'll start on time, and this is being recorded in case you miss any of it. Welcome to part 2 of psychological safety at work. The first part was on February 9th, and we have a recording to share with you for that. And today we're going to have part 2 of this workshop. Before we do, I want to welcome you all and thank our sponsors for making these programs possible. We have Kennebunk Savings, Coca-Cola Northeast, and Prime Buckles. We also have content partners, Full Spectrum Wellness, Rosemary Conroy for the art they just admired, and the Richards Group, of course, NAMI New Hampshire, Dartmouth Health, and the Brown Center. Our speakers today, some of you may have been introduced to them, but I'll have a brief introduction just in case you're joining us for the first time. Shannon Prescott is the Director of Risk Control for the Richards Group, serving business clients with employment practice compliance and safety program evaluation and implementation, helping them achieve compliance with OSHA, DOT, and DOL regulations. I'm going to put a link because their bios are extensive in the chat for the rest of the bio. And Ross Gibson is Leadership and Organizational Development Consultant, Facilitator, and the Chief of Operations and Employee Benefits Practice at the Richards Group. Ross works with organizations to help develop positive leadership growth. And I will hand it over. And I invite you, before I do, to actually go on our website, nhbsr.org, after this webinar and view our upcoming webinars. I'll hand it over to Ross and Shannon.
Thank you.
Go ahead and share that screen.
It's good.
Looks good. All right. So welcome back. I know a lot of you were with us a few weeks ago, last month, when we did the first piece to this. And I think we might have some new people that joined just for the second half. We do this presentation quite a bit around New England at this point. So, and we talking about psychological safety in a lot of different areas in front of groups right now. So I know I invited a few people to come just join into this part of the workshop, because this is, if you thought last time was interactive, get ready. This is the super interactive part. We want to just remind you that there is a workbook that correlates with this, and especially today, if you can have that open and utilize the takeaways sheet on page 30, there's a anytime you see numbers at the bottom of the slide, it's going to correlate back to what's in the workbook for you. There are checklists in there for you. There are articles. There are quotes, any quotes that we mention in here. There are a list of quotes. There's a list of books that we might mention for you to continue your learning, because we certainly can't cover everything here today in the 1 hour lunch and learn. But we did want to just kind of recap a little bit what we did last month in our first session. So just some basic bullets. We talked about what is psychological safety, defining that. We introduced Dr. Edmondson, who is the author of The Fearless Organization. If you have not purchased that book yet, I do highly recommend that you purchase it. Start reading through it. It is one of those books I feel like where you can kind of piece through different chapters too and read. Reading into the research that's gone into this and the concept of that'll help round. Want to say something, Ross?
No, you were breaking up on me a little bit. So
All right, I have unstable connection today for some reason, and I'm not sure why. So hopefully it won't be too bad. Just let me know if I do freeze.
I'll just jump in for you. Yep.
Thank you. We talked about leadership and employee engagement and how those two things meet in the workplace, and where those programs and systems can fail and where they can succeed. We did an exercise that identified the attributes of a great leader, and vice versa, what happens when we might not have a great leader. And we looked at the impact of organizations when they're not psychologically safe. So today I'm going to hand it over to Ross to get us started. We're going to take you through 6 key skills. And this is, you'll see in page 10 on your workbooks, you will see some information about each one of these. And it's a pretty basic acronym here: leading by example, engaging, actively listening, developing, empowering, and recognizing your employees. And how do we do that? So we're going to work through each one of these with some interactive exercises. And the goal here is for each one of these pieces that we're going to go through, that we can all take something, including Ross and I, because we do this every workshop, think about something that we could work on. Continuous improvement. What could I do in this area to be better, to make myself more approachable, to create more psychological safety within my control, right? So I'm going to hand it over to Ross to start us off.
And thank you, Shannon. And you just said a word that I think is so important, and that word is better. There's no end destination when we talk about creating a great culture in the workplace, creating there's no perfect psychological safety, but there's always better. And I think it's important to point out that both Shannon and I are working managers as well. So we not only do this consulting work, but we lead teams within our organization. And I've been a supervisor for almost 40 years. I'm continually trying to get better at it because there's always something to learn. And this is number one, not so that we can make the acronym come out right. It's because this is the most important one. If we're not leading by example, if we aren't, to kind of steal Gandhi's words, if we aren't the change we seek in the world, then people are going to see right through it, right? So leading by example is critically important. So we have a little bit of a definition here. And those 3 green words are critical. Keep trust, right? Trust is the glue that holds everything together. If my words and my actions don't match, people aren't going to trust me. I'm not going to be trustworthy. And therefore, we're going to move the needle lower on psychological safety. But if there's alignment between what I say and what I do, between what you say and what you do, that's when people buy in. That's when people trust. That's when people say, I will go into battle with you. That's when people are feel better about their job, even if the walls are all burning down around you, right? So I think that's a great place to start. Let's go a little bit deeper on this. And having a positive attitude about all safety, right? And not seeing safety, whether we're talking about psychological safety, physical safety, mental safety, having a positive attitude and saying, we can do better, and this benefits all of us, right? Instead of seeing it as a chore, something to do. I went to a workshop and now I have to do this. If we embrace it as, this is great for moving the needle for the whole organization, again, people lean into that. It should be a core value within any environment. When you start work someplace, we should be hearing words of, welcome to ABC Company. We're so happy that you're here. You're in a safe place. You're in a safe place physically. You're in a safe place psychologically. We want you to do your very best. We want you to be innovative. We want you to be creative. And you can't be innovative and creative if you don't feel safe, right? So this is absolutely critically important. Sharing the vision with team members, being very transparent about this, talking about it all the time, whether it's in one-on-one meetings or staff meetings, makes a critical difference. And you've probably heard this expression, you walk your talk, right? What I say matches what I do. Let me give you a very great example of when this can fall down. And this is a true example, working with a client recently. They said, Ross, I want to share this story with you. We were all told that we have to get out in front of our customers now in person more directly now that the pandemic is tailing out. Okay, I get that. We have to be out in front of our customers. We have to meet them. We have to have a physical. Great, got that. But the same person saying this is going to be working remotely for 2 months out of the country. And therefore, this person is not going to be doing that, yet expects all the people on his team to be doing that. You see the disconnect? And so people sit there and go, huh? What? Wait, what? Right? And it detracts from the ability to be truthful and honest in all situations. So walk your talk. Everyone. And Shannon, next time we do this, let's make the everyone red, right? Everyone owns safety and culture. Culture, I saw a great quote recently from Marcus Buckingham, who's just a marvelous thought leader. And he said, culture of your organization doesn't come from the top. Culture of the organization comes from the teams. Culture comes from people, right? So when everyone owns this, when everyone owns safety, when everyone believes in this, and not just the leaders, but everyone, that's when things get better. That's when things grow. And finally, you lead up, down, and sideways, right? There's a notion that leadership has to come from the top. So I will call BS on that, because leadership comes from everywhere. And this is such a great example. Shannon and I both love this example. You may know who this is. This is such a great, but this is like a high school picture, right? This was Sarah Blakely when she was a young woman. Sarah Blakely, who many of you probably are familiar with, she started a little company called Spanx. And Spanx over time grew and grew and grew. And Shannon, I don't know if you know, or Zena, there was a movie made out of this about her story. And she had a belief. She had a belief that I can make a company out of this, that this is something that can help women, and it can help women with their self-esteem and their self-image and their health and their mental health. And the story of Spanx is a great one. Well, not too long ago, and she always said, I will always treat, if you line up behind me, I will always have your back. I will always be with you. I will always reward you if you work hard and you go on this journey with me. Last year, she sold Spanx for a lot of money, like 0.00000. She got all the employees together, and she said, I'm going to give you 2 first-class tickets to anywhere in the world, plus $10,000 that you can use to do this, because I want you to live your dreams. I lived my dream, and now I'm sharing this with you. My gift to you is to have you go live your dream. And there's a video, so go on YouTube and click Sarah Blakely employee announcement. I forget what you'll find it. It'll pop up. And there she is standing in front of all the employees announcing this. Oh my goodness. It is remarkable. And I'm sure every person in that room would walk through a fire for Sarah Blakely. That's what a great leader does, right? She said she would always do this. And then she did. And I love that one of the hashtags is to new beginnings, because she's going to continue to do that going forward. So in your workbook, and I believe it's on pages 12 and 13, there's this terrific article by Tom Peters. We're going to see Tom Peters in a few minutes. Tom Peters, longtime New Englander. I think his whole life, he's in his late 70s now. He's had this remarkable career where he studied organizations for years. You may be familiar with his landmark book, In Search of Excellence, and that was written in the 80s. And he's been on this pursuit of what makes excellence in the workplace. How do we move the needle on excellence? And Zena, thank you for reminding people of where they can find the workbook. And years ago, when he was writing In Search of Excellence, one of the companies that at the time was one of his benchmark companies was Hewlett Packard. And he visited Hewlett Packard when Hewlett and Packard were still alive and still running the company. And one of the reasons why Hewlett Packard, at least back in the day, was so successful is they believed in MBWA, management by walking around, by getting up off your butt, out in the workplace, talking to people, helping people out, not to oversee them, but merely to create relationships and be a part of it. There's a great, just 2-pager in your handout. I highly recommend that you give that one a quick read. You won't regret it. So as Shannon said, we have 6 takeaways. So this is takeaway number 1. And takeaway number 1 is I lead by example. And it doesn't matter whether you're in a role where you have people reporting to or not, because we all lead. Leadership just means we influence others. period, full stop. If you influence another human being, you're leading. So I lead by example, therefore I will. Where can you move the needle on leading by example? Where do you need to match your walk and your talk together? Where can you be that change, right? That's how this can be a useful time for you this hour, is by making a commitment on page 30. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shannon.
Awesome. I just as an example for something here that's been coming up a lot this week, in a few conversations with clients and even amongst our own teams is I lead by example, therefore I will apologize when it's warranted. So if we've made a mistake, any of us, we apologize for it and then move forward to fix it together. But that's been a big theme this week. I don't know if there's something in the air, but just an example of something we can all do better. Apologize when we realize that we've done something wrong.
And Shannon, I'm so happy you brought that up, because in the Fearless organization, which I concur with you, is just, it's a must read. Amy Edmondson talks about destigmatizing failure, right? So when you apologize, you're destigmatizing failure. You're saying, you know what, we all mess up. Mm-hmm. Let's recognize it. Let's acknowledge it. Let's be transparent about it. Let's learn from it, instead of making it a thing that scolding and wrong, and I'm going to write you up and all that sort of thing. So
absolutely. And when you bring forward, a mistake and you're honest about it, then it's a whole lot. It's a better conversation instead of trying to hide things and that kind of stuff. So number 2, engaging team members. Ross was just talking about Marcus Buckingham, and here's a great quote. And we've said this a lot recently too. People leave managers, not companies. This has been quite the theme, I would say, even more so than it ever has been over the last year, as we are coming back out of the pandemic and looking at what this new world looks like for us in the workforce. It is more apparent than ever that employees will leave a bad manager, and it has nothing to do necessarily with the company itself. So it's you could have high performing teams, have best places to work, Vermont, right? Richard's Group. You could have all of these awards and accolades and that kind of thing, and have one bad seed, one bad manager, one area where you have a high turnover, one area where employees are unhappy, those kinds of things. And it's all to do with that initial interaction that they're having with their managers.
So here comes a great example.
Here you go. This is for you.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't say I could have a real one.
Well, you didn't ask.
Did that freeze when it started playing?
That's right where it's supposed to stop.
Okay. So idea behind here, right? Expectations, setting expectations. The expectations weren't set for those two girls right there. The first question is, do you want a pony? Yeah, I would like a pony. Well, here's a toy pony. Do you also want a pony? And that girl gets a real pony, a real live pony, which is, I know every little girl's dreams, a lot of kids' dreams, right? When they're young, is they want a pony. We need to set those expectations and be clear to people as to what it is that we are asking, what we are offering, what we are expecting them to deliver to us. We cannot expect them to meet our level of expectation if we aren't setting those levels for them. So if they're not reaching that bar for you, part of that is going back and looking and saying, was I clear enough before we jump to the, how dare you not listen to me? Or how could you not understand? I made it so clear. Go back and see, did you make it clear enough? Expectation is the root of all heartache. We have in our heads here what we think is going to happen, or perhaps how we would get there. Or again, what this final outcome might look like. And if we're not setting that in a clear, organized fashion with our team members, when you're delegating out tasks and that kind of thing, then it's not going to work well for anybody in the end. And the phrase that I shouldn't have to, that I get this a lot with clients, they should that to people.
You're cutting out again a little bit.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know what is going on for me. You know what? I'm going to just turn off my video.
That might.
And that might help a little bit with my cutting in and out. I shouldn't have to, the expectation that people should just have common sense, right? And I cannot stand that term common sense. Common sense to me, it just means whatever your history, your experience in your own personal life has led you up to this moment. And that's what's developed your common sense. It does not mean that everybody is going to understand everything that you understand or think the way that you think. So an example to show you all, and we're actually going to come back to this in another one to come back to this exercise and look at it again. This is, as you know, Ross gets involved with clients and that kind of thing. I also get involved with clients and many HR professionals when a tough situation comes up and we're not exactly sure how to handle it. So this is an email that was received. In this case, we had a supervisor who is trying to engage a team of service professionals to help get them more involved in some marketing tasks. They're putting together a company proposal, and they would like to put together descriptions of what all the different teams offer to clients. So this was the original email. Hello, ladies. I would like to ask if you can collaborate and come up with a separate page for our new proposal that outlines what services your team provides to a client. This should include bios, photos, and then a general blurb. If you need help getting going, let me know, but I feel like you can work together to come up with a great start. Please send this to me by the end of next week. Thank you. So I want you to use the chat right now. And if you could drop into the chat your thoughts on this. Do you think that it is clear on what is expected of these employees?
And there's at least a couple challenges on this one, right?
Yeah. Okay, Mista thinks it's clear. Shiloh says an example would be better. Jennifer does not think it's clear. Christine also would appreciate an example. They don't know what the proposal is about, correct, Megan? It's a general proposal where they're going to, insert just here's all of our company information up front, and then I'm sure they would add in other stuff. They should define what the blurb should be, the length, the content. It's the end product, purpose, where will it be used? Would appreciate more specific details. Yeah, so these are a team of employees that, again, are not marketing people. These are not sales professionals. They offer a service, a client service, and it's not something that they would normally do, be writing up, copy essentially for a marketing piece. Stephanie just put in another good comment. Do they want it started or completed by the due date? Right? That wasn't entirely clear either. So the employees, they got together, they decided to grab some pre-written bios that they had on their website, along with the headshots that were already taken for the website, and they put those into a Word document. They sent it back before the due date, and they got a reply a month and a half after the due date. They got it in before the due date as asked, and the supervisor did not reply for a month and a half. Any thoughts on that? Wow, says Mr. Yes. So this is the reply. Christy, so much for leading by example. Wow, not cool. Waste of time. That was an exact quote from one of the employees. It was a complete waste of my time. How important was it actually? And it makes it seem like it wasn't that important. Yeah, exactly. And this is how that employee, the employee that reached out to HR in particular is a lead of that team. And that's how she was feeling. I feel like I wasted my time. I'm not sure if I did anything right. There was absolutely no feedback. Month and a half later, we get this. Hi, gang. okay start, but it's the goal to have everything on one page. I was hoping that I would not have to edit this at all and that you would provide me with a ready to publish page. That is not what I got. The bios are too long and the service blurb too short. Let's do less of you and more of service. Perhaps you can think of a positive client experience to share. Think of what a client needs to know and what you provide and why that is impactful. Yes, Kim. Kim says, second request has completely different request and focus. This has some detail. Exactly, Tessa. This was not explained, thank you, Shiloh, at all in the first. This would have been very helpful the first time around. Yeah.
Great comments.
Yes, Katie, exactly. In the first email, she said specifically, please get started on this, right? Karen would feel so frustrated and a bit unmotivated right now. Exactly.
Yeah.
And the nasty Graham tone, annoyed. And do they get 1.5 months to reply? Yeah. No, that's the thing with this manager in particular. No, they would have been scolded for not going back. There's no appreciation showed. If it's that bad, why wait so long to let them know that it needs to be reworked? Exactly, right? Even the tone of the greeting from good morning, ladies to hi, gang, right? It immediately starts off with this negative tone. And again, thank you for the clear examples now, but it feels like you're being reprimanded and through this process. So this is a perfect example of just some low-hanging fruit with the psychological safety spectrum here, right? Just basic email communication back and forth on a simple project. And could this email have been a meeting perhaps? Sometimes meetings can be emails and sometimes emails need to be meetings, right? Where we might need to sit and talk, let people ask questions, work it out, make sure we're being absolutely clear. Ross is going to talk about actively listening and communicating, three-way communication. So we'll come back to this in another section to go a little bit further. Stephanie makes another comment that this caused wasted time for the team and the supervisor. Yeah, absolutely. And HR. And then I got brought into it. So it's this ripple effect of people having to exert time into this because this employee was just completely unsure of how to approach their supervisor on how to respond to this, even because they were afraid to respond and get reprimanded even more so. So we have two critical questions to ask. There's in section 13 of your workbook on page 13, you'll see this in there as well. First one is, especially as a leader, what do you expect of me? And then how am I doing against your expectations of me? And also flipping that and really trying to get our employees to ask those questions too, if they feel that we haven't been clear enough, right? I'm definitely one where this is number 2 is something I'm always working on. I set clear expectations, therefore I will. Sometimes we are rushed. So it's not that I don't intend to set clear expectations, but sometimes I think, well, she gets me, she knows how I think, she's going to get this when I say it. And it's not always clear. So taking the time to slow down, make sure we're explaining things well. And if it requires a phone call, a video chat, an in-person meeting versus an email, if it's going to be a complicated thing, let's make sure that we get that communication out the right way.
Absolutely. And we'll save the Brene Brown quote for a few minutes on this, but it becomes critical in doing this. So let's dive into number 3, which is actively listens and practices three-way communication. This is, when I do leadership workshops, I always tell people, this is your superpower, right? And Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, another book, in my opinion, that everyone should read. The deepest hunger of the human heart is to be understood. Oh my goodness, I use this quote all the time because we all want to be understood. Everybody that's on this webinar today, you want to be understood by other people, whether it's your coworkers, your partner, your kids, your parents. You want to be understood, and the way we understand others is by our ability to listen. I just love cute slides like this, right? And this one too. So being able to listen is critical. Now, before you hit the button here, let me cue this up. This is, I told you we're going to hear from Tom Peters. So Tom Peters, who's been studying organizations for years, he's going to jump into this webinar as if he were with us live, right? So he's going to be talking right to the camera, and he's going to talk about a research study, and he's going to pose a question. When he poses the question, we're going to stop the video and we're going to ask you, what do you think? And what I'm going to ask you to do is type your answer into the chat, right? So be ready for this. Type your answer into the chat, and then we'll see how well you did by continuing on with the video. So here goes.
A Harvard Med School doc by the name of Jerome Groopman wrote a lovely book called How Doctors Think. And he begins by saying, when you are engaging a patient, what is the number one source of evidence about that patient's problem? And he answers the obvious answer. Duh, the patient. The patient won't use the right technical language. The signal to noise ratio won't be all that high, but in the course of a 5 or 10 or 15-minute discussion, you will pull out an incredible number of pearls. Okay, best source of information about a patient's ailment is the patient, comma. At that point, Groopman refers us or leads us to a research study that asks and then answers the following question. But I'm going to halt for 3 seconds in here while you think of what your answer is. How long is it before the doctor addresses you, sits down with you? How long is it before the doctor, on average, interrupts?
Okay. This is a real research study. How long on average before the doctor interrupts the patient? Type your answer in the chat, please. 30 seconds, 1 minute, 20 seconds, 5 seconds, 20 seconds, 33 minutes. Wow, look at this, is great. Immediately. I love the immediately. 2 minutes, 8 seconds, 30. Lisa, only 30, either probably 30 seconds, right? A few minutes, 1 minute. These are great. And there's a wide range here. But no one got it exactly right. Let's see what the answer is, Shannon.
And if you said 18 seconds, you got it exactly right. 18 seconds, and the doctor has interrupted with his opinion. Now, am I doing this little piece for you to trash doctors? Absolutely not. I'm doing this little piece to trash you. Among the bosses who are watching this, among any of us who are watching this, who are experts or professionals or what have you, I bet you that among the boss audience watching this, that 7 out of 8 are 18-second bosses.
So think about this for a moment. And I think Tom is spot on. And Shannon, you can go to the next slide. Before I explain what's on the screen right here, think of the last time you were having a chat with your boss. My guess is your boss is a good person. Okay, I'm going to go with that premise. And that your boss cares about you. And you're trying to explain something that you're emotional about, that you're passionate about, that you're upset about to your boss. And while you're describing it, you see her lips starting to move. She's preparing her response. He's thinking about what he's going to say to you. You've stopped listening and you get into response mode. So I'll make the argument with Tom that 18 seconds is probably even shorter, because that's only when they start talking. You start preparing your response before that. This is really interesting stuff. And we could go deep into the neurobiology behind this. It's really important. And so I'm going to cover a couple more things before we get to number 3. The first is, this model is directly from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is habit 5. Here's my takeaway tip for you, because we only have a short amount of time with you. Get a copy of the 7 Habits. And if you feel like you don't have time to read, get an audio version of it, because Stephen Covey narrated the book before he passed away in 2012. And he has a very resonant, passionate voice. I love listening to him. And just skip right to habit 5. You don't have to read the 7 habits sequentially. And it's this, what's my intent? My intent's to understand. And I only speak up if I have to clarify the content and reiterate the feeling of what someone's saying. right? Again, we could spend a couple hours right here on this slide. That's my takeaway tip for you is to do that. How to be a better listener in a world where everyone else is talking. So I found this post by Etaghan Tank on LinkedIn a few years ago. You have this in your workbook on page 14, so you can go through, look people in the eye. You were taught this as a kid, right? If you're not looking somebody in the eye, it shows that you're hiding something, you're not confident, whatever the case may be. Wait till someone else is done until truly done speaking to respond. This is one I struggle with all the time. My intent's great. I want to explain something. I want to tell a story. I want to give my autobiography. But I haven't stopped. I stopped listening. Pay attention to the nonverbal cues. Someone may be talking, but there's studies have shown that more information can be gleaned from the tone of voice and the body language and the eye contact. And this is why conversations virtually just aren't the same as being in person. There are always better questions that we can ask. And here's a great one. If you need to have a challenging conversation with somebody and you're going to schedule it, you can say to that person ahead of time, when we get together next Tuesday at 10 o'clock, what's the most important thing you and I need to talk about? Try that. It's a great question to ask. Having the space, and I'm not talking about the physical space, I'm talking about creating the space to allow people to think a little bit, to reflect a little bit. Too often we try to fill in the blank spaces with words. And sometimes the best thing we can do, someone's talking to us, is just do this. Right? Giving them the space to continue, to respond, to emote, whatever the case may be. And finally, pay attention to who's doing all the talking and who's doing all the listening. If you're in a leadership role, it should be about 80-20, with you listening 80% of the time. Dead serious about that. So here, let's do a little exercise here. And this is a great way to wrap up this particular one. Think about being at work. Okay, so you're on this webinar right now. My guess is most of you are working today. You're just taking time for your lunch break. And thanks again to NHBSR for doing this for us. What gets in the way at work? You can use the chat, or you can even, I don't know if you have the ability to unmute yourself. So let's just use the chat. You're at work. Let me paint the scenario here. You're at work and somebody comes by and says, I'll just pick on a couple names here. Lisa, you got a second? Jennifer, can I talk to you right now? Hey, I need a few minutes of your time. I'm trying to put some emotion into my voice. What gets in the way of being able to right there, right in the moment, just listen purely to understand? If we can get a couple examples typed into the chat here. The to-do list, that's huge, Lisa, right? Unexpected interruptions. And by the way, there's the unexpected interruptions and the regular interruptions. Changing priorities from your boss, totally. Physical location. Thanks, Kim. That's a great one, right? Because sometimes we're just not in the right space to do this. We do a lot of work in healthcare. Standing at the nurse's station or at the entrance to the emergency room is not the best place to have a challenging conversation. Yeah, Lisa, you're thinking about the next meeting. Lauren, that's a great one. Email notifications. I'll ask a group, how many different ways do you know you have a new email if you're using Outlook? There's like 8 or 9, depending on how many devices that you have. Deadlines. Stuff that's going on in your head. Their priority is not your priority. That's a big one. You're sitting there, Lauren, working away at something, and they come in and say, do you have a second? And by the way, is it ever a second? No, it's never even a minute as well, right? Here's one that I don't, and somebody might have typed this in here, but I'm gonna give one that's really important. And that is your past history with this person. That is your paradigm of what you think this person is going to talk about. That is the prejudice we have in our head. And keep in mind, the word prejudice means to prejudge, right? So we prejudge all the time. We bring our prejudices to work. We all do. I do. Right? Your emotional status at the time. That's wonderful. Multiple platforms that need to be monitored. Slack team. Doesn't it drive you nuts? There's just all these alerts going on. By the way, turn them all off. Turn them all off. Before we jumped onto the webinar, it was wonderful. Shannon said, "Oh, I got to close Outlook." Right? Beautiful, because you don't want to get interrupted. It gets involved with your focus, your emotional status at the time. So here a great takeaway tip for you before I wrap this one up. The takeaway tip for you is really think about what gets in the way of being able to listen to someone, really listen to someone, not answer just a routine or rote question, but really have a meaningful conversation with someone. Part of our job is to get rid of all those things that get in the way. I listen first to understand, therefore I will. Who do you need to do a better job listening to? Who do you need to give more space to when they come in and sit and they say, do you have a moment? You go, you know what? I'm going to turn Outlook off. I'm going to turn Slack off. I'm going to turn Teams off, and I'm going to be just present with you, because being present is a gift. That's why we call it the present, right? Being present is a gift. I listen first to understand, therefore I will. Let's move on to number 4.
All right. I recently just took a class called Emotional CPR, and I did that as a add-on to, I'm a mental health first aid instructor. Emotional CPR is much different type of course, and it teaches you to do exactly what Ross was just talking about, learning how to close your mouth, nod your head, acknowledge the person, listen without trying to fix. And it's hard. It is a hard class. It's an emotional class, and but I'm happy to share the information on where you could sign up to do something like that. They're virtual trainings, and I think it's good work anybody should do, and you really find out a lot about yourself. So that is definitely a great takeaway. Developing team members through teaching, coaching, and feedback, and those 3 things are not all the same. So we have to be able to take feedback regardless of how it's delivered and apply it productively. We have to do this for a simple reason. Mastery requires feedback. Brene Brown, another amazing author, poster, influencer, to follow, look up. There's a list of her books that I have on my Amazon wish list. And I believe this was the quote that Ross was referring to, or no, it's not. It's the next screen. Next screen. I see it. Another Brene Brown quote on their next screen. So this is key. We're not just talking about that our employees, or that we as employees need to be able to accept feedback. That is a big part to it, to your own development, especially when you're first starting out somewhere, taking that feedback and using that to build better. But us as supervisors, as leaders, as managers, we have to be able to take feedback, and no matter how it's delivered, angrily to us in the moment because employees are frustrated with us, or accusatory even, if we've done something. And a big part to this listening is trying to hear through what they're saying, right? What is the actual reason that they're frustrated here, and take into account that this could have been something that I did, even unintentionally, but I may have done this. Especially when we think about things in our last session, we talked about truly having diversity and inclusion and equity and belonging in the workplace, and through psychological safety, is that we could be doing things that we just do not even realize are creating an unpsychologically safe environment for somebody based on their own past experiences, lived experience, their gender identities, their, whatever that might be. We may be doing something. So if we get that feedback, we should take that into consideration as well, and see what we can do to be, again, continuous improvement, be better with it. We can't be the best leaders. We can't master being leaders without feedback. And this is the quote we were talking about. Clear is kind, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And I say this so often to people on a regular basis. Let's bring it back to the example that we were using. This is the perfect example of where clear is kind and unclear is unkind. That initial email was unclear. The employees, as far as I'm concerned, given what they were given in that email, they did their best at creating a first draft. If this were my instruction to my team, and that is what I got, and it was not what I expected, my first step would be go back to what I sent them and see what expectation did I set for them, because I have one in my head. Did I make that clear? And it would have been clear that it was not, right? So what would be a better way? Does anyone want to take a shot in the chat of kind of rephrasing this quickly, a better way to approach it? We mentioned a big thing a little while ago that could happen to approach this right off the bat. A meeting, Zena, thank you. Start off by apologizing for being unclear. Exactly. Get rid of the first paragraph. I will definitely send information out on emotional CPR, Daniela. Might have acknowledged my lack of clear communication and apologized. Yep, apologize for being unclear. Thank you for sharing the draft for this page. I can see I missed the mark on setting expectations. Let's get together and go over what my needs are and what the timeline is. I love that, Kim. That's perfect. That's really all that needed. So let's set a time, right? And then we just need to find a time together. Thank the team for the work they did already. And more cheers for Kim. Exactly. This is an opportunity where we could use the teaching, coaching, feedback method here that we're to make it more clear. This is actually, so part of where these leadership skills come from in this acronym and in the format for this part of it comes from a 2.5-hour safety program that was made for the construction industry from OSHA called Foundations of Safety Leadership. And this is a big part to this is addressing things in the moment. And when you see an employee doing something, or in this case, through this email, observe that clearly it wasn't exactly what I needed, we need to first address the issue in a positive way. We then need to problem solve together, and we can't problem solve just us. It's got to be a team effort. Even OSHA says that you have to have frontline workers buy-in and input to have a complete safety program. And that goes for any of your employment policies. And the best, most functioning workplaces that I get to work with are ones who listen to their employees, take in the feedback, and put in changes that make sense, right? But we should have that discussion so that they feel heard, and then we can come to a solution together. Compromise happens for sure. We practice the action together. In this case, we would meet together to go through and make sure that we all know and we're all on the same page, but get together so we can communicate together properly. And the difference is here, when we're teaching, we're telling. When we're coaching, we're watching. And when it's feedback, we're evaluating performance. Feedback can be positive too. We can lead with positive feedback, make sure that we tell them what they're doing right, not just what they're doing wrong all the time. If all you ever heard every single day when you went into work was everything that you were doing wrong, it would be a very demoralizing, unsafe place to work for sure. So this is it's a nice little graphic about just the different types of feedback and where we can implement positive feedback. Giving reinforcing feedback. Start with small things. If you're not sure how to start, just thanking them for showing up to work. That's a big part. Even thanking them for things like when they're calling out sick. That sounds silly, 2019. What do you mean? I don't want to be down a person, but nowadays we don't want them coming into work sick. So I appreciate that you called in and let me know instead of trying to come in and expose the workplace. Ross, did you have a comment? Okay. Create a safe and trusting environment, ask their opinions, appreciate their input, address toxic behavior when it's happening. This is a big one. I see that a lot of employees, will come and they'll express concerns, and maybe it's about a particular employee or interactions with a coworker, that kind of thing. And, or even a client or whatever it is, and we don't address it properly or put in the right protections for them, or have a mediation, have a meeting about it so that we can address it and go forward together. And that creates this unpsychological unsafe psychological environment where I'm going to stop coming to you about this person. And eventually I'm just going to probably go find another job, because the more I see you not taking care of the toxic behavior, it means that it's okay with you and that you're going to continue to allow it. Daily routine, don't make it always a special occasion. Once a year, we give people accolades. It should be a regular thing throughout, just like I tell my clients that we teach safety as we teach them how to produce. Whatever it is that you're training them to do, teach them the safety that goes along with it while you're training them how to do it. You can work it into your day to day. So saying thank yous and pleases and showing appreciation every day. And then of course, walking your talk. So takeaway number 4, I develop team members through teaching, coaching, and feedback. Therefore, I will move on to empowering.
And, as you fill out that number 4, the one that really resonates for me, Shannon, is the giving feedback. We may think we've given people feedback, and by the way, positive feedback has a 30x multiplier versus negative feedback. And so the takeaway from that is, give positive feedback as much as you can. That's something that Shannon will come back to with number 6. But let me briefly go, because we have about 10 minutes left. Let me briefly go through number 5, which is empowering team members. And again, this is one where we could spend a whole bunch of time on. But I agree with Maxwell. Leaders become great not because of their power, but because of their ability to empower other people. So we're just going to focus on one thing when it talks about empowering. We want to empower people to talk about safety concerns, injuries, near misses. We want to have them report fixed hazards, to speak up, to make decisions. But before you go to the next slide, we've mentioned the Fearless organization several times now. Amy Edmondson started doing the work that she does and the research that she's gotten into because way back over 25 years ago, as a young researcher out of Harvard, she had this premise that great teams had fewer safety incidents than weak teams. And what she found through the course of her research was the exact opposite. Great teams are empowered to report things that aren't going right. They bring them forward, they talk about them, they discuss them. Weak teams hide them. And therefore, on the surface, they look like they're healthier, but they're not. So here's the one, besides reading the Fearless organization, here's one more tip that we're going to give you. And I can see the chat's blowing up. I can't keep an eye on that. So I want to introduce you to Dan Pink. And Dan Pink is the author of a number of books, but the one I want to stress here is Drive. This changed things for me in terms of working with other people and empowering people dramatically when I first read it 12, 13 years ago. Dan wanted to figure out what motivates people. So, the old notion is there's either one or another way that people are motivated, the carrot or the stick, right? And this is a great drawing that represents it. And what he found was it's neither one of them. And what he did find, though, here's the good news. There are 3 things that motivate people. One is autonomy. And this doesn't mean let me work alone. This means don't be looking over my shoulder every 30 seconds, second guessing me and micromanage me. Let me be the best I can be by letting me be, right? Autonomy, mastery, directly related to that. And I want to be really good at what I do. I don't care if you're flipping hamburgers at McDonald's or you're running an aerospace company. We all want to be good at what we do. We all want people to notice and say, hey, Shannon, great job on that presentation. By the way, Shannon, great job on that presentation. We want to be really good at what we do, and we want to know that our work matters. Shannon and I are very fortunate because we're absolutely passionate about what we do. We have a strong sense of purpose to help organizations be safe in all aspects of safety, to help leaders be the best they can possibly be. When we do this, we're empowering people to do their best, to bring their best, to be their best. And we only can do that if we are providing an environment that's safe for them. So I empower team members, therefore I will. And by the way, the therefore I will might be really simple. Get a copy of Dan Pink's book, Drive, and read it, understand it, dive into it. By the way, great YouTube videos that he does, great stuff that he posts online. He's someone to follow on LinkedIn. So that's, again, just another takeaway tip here. But now Shannon's going to take us into number 6 and bring us home.
All right. So number 6, finally, recognizing team members for a job well done. Another great quote: leaders don't look for recognition from others. Leaders look for others to recognize. At this point in my career as a manager, what I'm looking to is to build a strong team that is going to be able to support all the things that we're doing. And when you have that team working for you, I need to make sure that they're supported properly so that they can succeed. Their success is my success. I look good when they look good, right? So what do I need to do to make sure that you have everything you need to do your job, and make sure that they get recognized for that work? I don't take credit for their work. When they do the work, they get the credit for that work so that people can learn to build trust in them as well. I already have our clients' trust, right? So Doug Conant, leader, president, CEO of Campbell Soup. The first thing for any leader is to inspire trust. Part of what you can do there's a lot of different ways to motivate or recognize an employee. And part of this is getting to know your employees, because you need to be able to connect with them the right way, find what motivates them, what their recognition love language is. There's a better term for that in a few slides here. But he wrote over 30,000 handwritten notes to employees over the course of his employment with Campbell Soup that were thoughtful, heartfelt, directed towards the people. And it wasn't, I believe it was just for different things that may have been coming up for the employee, for recognition of anniversaries and that kind of thing. But making sure that he reached out on a regular basis for a company as large as Campbell Soup, for that to happen this frequent is not heard of a lot. And these are things that we can do. It's nice to get a nice little handwritten card from your manager or a little token of appreciation. We just had National Employee Appreciation Day last week. So there's, it's ways we shouldn't wait for that day though. It should be happening all the time. So just like there's the book out there of the 5 love languages, we have 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. And it's understanding that, again, people are motivated by different things, and people are not all the same, right? So one size does not fit all. This is for any one of your programs, your policies, if you have rewards for employees and that kind of thing. We have to make it a wide range of what's going to work and motivate everybody. And that can be hard. Sometimes we have people that want tangible gifts. I want a gift card. I want employee swag. I really like that vest or coat Ross is wearing right now. Where do I get that one? I know it's at the TRG store. I want a TRG store voucher so I can go get that cool coat that Ross is wearing. Could be quality time. It could be like taking somebody out to lunch. I try to take my team out to lunch at least once a month. It's just the 3 of us, so it's a little bit easier to get us together. Words of affirmation. I always make sure to say thank you. I always make sure they know I appreciate the work that they put into each of our projects, because they can be complex. Acts of service, so helping them out, right? Supporting, maybe, stepping in for them, advocating for them. Physical touch. So this is where we get into, it's a workplace. So high fives, fist bumps, shoulder side hugs, only with consent, and if it's what that person, appreciates. So takeaway number 6, I give thanks genuinely and often, therefore I will. And I will let Ross fully close this out, or you want me to close this out?
I'll run with it. So we provided some tools for you, and I'm just looking at my copy of the workbook. So if you go to page 20, there are some leadership behaviors that increase risk and make organizations less safe. We don't like to go through the negatives there, right? And then the following couple pages are a team assessment tool. And this is based on Amy's work, and a leader assessment tool. So again, these are things that you can take out of this. But here we're going to do a quick wrap up here. Here's the big secret. There is no one big thing. There is no, we so appreciate you joining us for this hour or 2 hours if you joined us back in February. There is no big, because the secret to the big, drum roll, secret to the big is the little. It's the little things that we do moment to moment, minute to minute, hour to hour. It's the next email we send. Because as Brene says, the trust is built in the very small moments. And I truly believe that. And Amy says each of us can shape the climate in which we work in small ways. See, there's a theme here. The secret to the big is the little. So here's the very last one. Tab Mastery Warrior, who has a great story, which we just don't have time to tell. The ability to learn is the most important quality a leader can have. And by the way, we're all leaders. So the takeaways are all captured on page 30. You can put those in there. We're spot on time, perfect. There's Shannon and myself. There are our email. We'll leave this up on the screen for a moment. We thank you. I live in Vermont, so I thank you with my green heart. And we really appreciate you being here. I can hang out for a few minutes, but I know, Zena, we're at the end of our hour, right?
Yes, and I will follow up with an email with the recording, and everybody will get your email contacts for any content related questions. I just wanted to mention that in April, we have a webinar, Nurtured by Nature. That's our Bear in Mind webinar in time for Earth Day. And we have a registration link in the chat. We have wonderful Professor Ferguson from UNH who's done research on the topic, and Northeast Passage, an organization that uses nature for people with visible and invisible disabilities. So it's a very interesting topic. Again, if Shannon will send that link to the CPR, and we do have a couple of spots if you're interested for the mental health first aid training with Shannon in May.